You'd like to believe that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is really bright, right? Smart lady. Has to be. She was a bartender, for crying out loud, and she knocked off a longtime Democrat congresswoman. So you got to believe she's smart, right? And they got an issue in New York. They got a couple of issues in New York worth talking about today. One that's really, really great that the media isn't spending a lot of time on, and one that is horrible that the media isn't spending a lot of time on. I'm talking about the national corrupt, biased mainstream media that has a very, very strong agenda. Well, let me start on the part that's awful. The violence, the crime rate is soaring in New York City. People are getting shot dead in broad daylight. I just saw driving in today, or heard rather on the radio, that a 1-year-old boy was shot and killed at a cookout in New York City. Children are being killed. People of color are disproportionately dying because of the skyrocketing crime rate that is inevitably happening in cities run by Democrat mayors that don't really want the police to police. Do you know that over in St. Petersburg, Florida, their new policy, their emerging policy is we're not going to respond to nonviolent calls to 911. In other words, calls that are made to our dispatchers, if it's not a call of violence, we're not going to respond. So if somebody calls to say there's a suspicious person outside my window, or somebody steals something, or somebody commits a crime, unless it's an act of violence, the St. Petersburg police chief is proudly proclaiming, we ain't responding. And the NAACP is so happy about this. They love it. They love it. So what do you think is happening to policing all over America? Police officers have to be incredibly dubious, incredibly worried about getting involved. And so in a city like Chicago or New York or Los Angeles, where cops are being hamstrung over activists who don't want them to do their jobs because of the horrific death of George Floyd and all that ensued after that, well, now cities are paying the price. And New York City's crime is skyrocketing. Listen to what this brilliant progressive, this smart, charismatic, bubbly, far-left, radical progressive Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had to say over the weekend about rising crime and why it's happening. Get ready, because this is a doozy.
So why is this uptick in crime happening? Well, let's think about it. Do we think this has to do with the fact that there's record unemployment in the United States right now? The fact that people are at a level of economic desperation that we have not seen since the Great Recession? Maybe this has to do with the fact that people aren't paying their rent and are scared to pay their rent. And so they go out and they need to feed their child and they don't have money. So you maybe have to, they're put in a position where they feel like they either need to shoplift some bread or go hungry that night. Maybe it's the fact that unemployment provisions have not been given to everyone. Maybe it's because of the fact that some people still haven't gotten their stimulus checks yet.
Tell me you've ever heard a stupider person in public life in your life. I dare you. Maybe people are hungry and they need to steal a loaf of bread, like Jean Valjean from Les Miserables, the Victor Hugo novel. That's all it, because he was a good man. And all he did was steal a loaf of bread. So when you slaughter a 1-year-old who's at a cookout, or you kill somebody when you're shooting people, and you just want to steal a loaf of bread because maybe your stimulus check hasn't arrived yet.